All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's City Council regular meeting for Monday, October 7th. Just one study session item for tonight. We have the City Attorney Tamara Niles here to discuss licensing and potential city regulations for the natural medicine businesses. Good evening, City Attorney Niles.
Good evening. The presentation tonight is going to discuss Colorado law after Prop 122 that decriminalized psychedelic mushrooms, or as it's known in the law, natural medicine, and the city's ability to regulate it. So what we'll be asking for tonight after this presentation is if we do want to take some action to regulate the business of providing mushrooms for ingestion as well as the cultivation and processing of these natural medicines, and if so, how you would like to see us regulate that. We do have a relatively short timeline for this. The state will start issuing licenses on December 31st for applicants. So if we are going to regulate the business of these mushrooms, not the land use, that will be a separate action item, we do need to get some direction from City Council so we can act no later than the beginning of November. So in November 2022, Colorado voters did pass Proposition 122, which was intended to decriminalize psychedelic mushrooms or natural medicines. Then in May 2023, the state legislature adopted Senate Bill 23-290 to provide a regulatory framework to give the state and cities some guidance to prepare for this December 31, 2024 effective date. Unlike marijuana businesses, however, cities specifically cannot prohibit these within the city. We are limited in what we can and can't do, and so that's what this presentation is, to provide you information on the city's role in this new endeavor within the state of Colorado. That Senate bill did create a new drug petty offense to make unlawful the cultivation of natural medicine, as well as to criminalize allowing access to these natural medicines for anyone under the age of 21. Then in summer 2024, and this is what we were waiting on, in both June and August, the state issued regulations to provide a framework for licensure, which will solely be done by the state. And then it left us some gaps to let us know where we can regulate, because we can't adopt any regulations that would be in violation of the state law. So the state code specifically allows municipalities to regulate time, place, and manner of the natural medicine business licenses that are issued by the state. We can also limit the areas or the land use where we allow these uses, and that will be coming to City Council for a public hearing. It's already been considered by Planning and Zoning. And we can also establish distance restrictions for things such as child care centers, preschools, residential dwellings. So this is the types of businesses that we can regulate: the time, place, and manner, and distance, and land use, which are natural medicine businesses, which include healing centers for the ingestion of natural medicine through licensed facilitators, cultivation facility, products manufacturers, testing, etc. City Council will hold that public hearing on October 21 to consider P&Z recommendations for the land use. So that will be where in our zones within the city, City Council will allow these businesses. And that's outside the scope of this presentation. That will solely be October 21 during your hearing. Then City Council can, but is not required to, provide those further time, place, and manner restrictions, distance requirements, etc. But again, we cannot require a license for any of these businesses, because that will solely be done by the state. I read 200 pages of regulations today on how the state intends to license and regulate those businesses. Only one city in Colorado so far has adopted ordinances regulating these businesses, and that's the city of Parker. They were really took an advanced stance on this. The rest of us generally were waiting for those regulations to come out, but Parker did a great job studying the issue and really provided a model for all of us to consider following if City Council does want to regulate these businesses. So Parker allows the natural healing centers, or similar to a medical provider in that where you can ingest natural medicines on site. And so they have treated them like medical offices for purposes of their land use. And then for cultivation, manufacturing, and testing, they allow them in L1 light industrial district. And then Parker also established a 1,000 feet distance between each business, schools, childcare centers, and residential areas. And they also have different regulations for screening of the businesses, lighting, no odor of the natural medicines coming from the business, security, use of hazardous materials, and regulated the business site in that way. Parker also added to their criminal code penalties for individuals aged 21 and over who have personal cultivation areas larger than allowed, or if they fail to enclose personal cultivation areas so that someone else can access them, or if they allow underage individuals to access natural medicine that is cultivated. Now, proposed in Castle Rock has had several meetings about their potential regulations. It's my understanding, though, they have tabled it until after the election to decide if they will regulate, and if so, how. But I thought City Council would be interested in hearing what Parker has proposed in their several meetings. So they also, like Parker, propose a 1,000 feet distance from childcare centers, schools, residential childcare facilities, and residential areas, specifically single-family dwellings, duplexes, and multifamily. They do allow, let's see, well, that one doesn't make sense. So they do grandfather in a use if it existed before a child care facility was built next door or something like that. So if they're already existing and a child care facility is built within 1,000 feet, it makes it clear that that use is still allowed, and that it restricts the hours of operation for these businesses between 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Castle Rock also went into detail in their business regulations. It limits public view into the business with some screening requirements. They address storage, security lighting, odors, somewhat similar to Parker in respects of how they regulate the manner of business. They also had some public comment when they first started considering this about existing businesses that may wish to provide maybe ingestion of natural businesses on site. And so they are still considering it if they will allow existing businesses to apply for an exemption from some of the location requirements. I attended a seminar from CML for Colorado City attorneys, and they provided examples of things like a spa or a massage provider that also wants to have a facilitator on site to oversee on-site ingestion of natural medicine. So they do have an exemption allowance for existing businesses that may not otherwise qualify, both in their land use code and distance requirements. Arapahoe County also just issued some regulations for unincorporated areas of the county, and so I thought council may be interested in seeing those too. And it specifically allows non-commercial cultivation, no more than 12 feet by 12 feet plots. They list all the zones, and these are just proposed at this point. We just received the proposed regulations. And of course, no odor, smoke, heat, glare, or light behind the property line if someone is cultivating on their own property. Now, for natural medicine businesses, Arapahoe County proposes to allow them in business or industrial zones, but no home occupations, that 1,000 feet restriction we see in both Castle Rock and Parker, and again, no odors beyond the property line or smoke or glare. So again, those zones that City Council may allow these to operate in will be the subject of an October 21 public hearing. But business regulations from Parker and those proposed in Castle Rock and Arapahoe County are similar to each other. So to that end, we have looked at all of those, and we think that a similar regulatory structure would work well within the city of Englewood. And so we started drafting a proposed ordinance on the assumption that City Council would want to regulate some of these. And in that draft, we have proposed regulations that mirror these. The 1,000-foot distance from schools, childcare, residential facilities. We have asked community development to create a map to make sure that that doesn't eliminate every location within the city, and we have confirmed that there are available locations that would meet these requirements. Also, we would propose no odor, smoke, heat, glare, or light beyond the property line of either cultivation or where a natural business is being operated. Screening required, secured. State regulations also require security cameras, and so we wouldn't want to duplicate any state requirements, but rather supplement. And of course, we can't conflict with the state requirements either. That is specific in the law. We also would propose business hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and regulate required security and use of hazardous materials. I did spend some time today reading through all these laws as well as looking at the Oregon experience. So Oregon has also legalized mushrooms, and I wanted to see what are the downsides, what are some things that cities could expect that perhaps we need to be proactive and address. And I could find very little. I couldn't find any complaints online regarding increased crime or any guidance from a city in Oregon that we should potentially look at. The state of Oregon has been legal for, I believe, 2 years now. They have about 20 licensed providers for these mushroom businesses, well, natural medicine businesses. And so it doesn't appear to me that we would require, based on the experience in Oregon, any more significant time, place, or manner restrictions. So my goal tonight is to receive guidance from City Council to allow us, do you want to regulate this? Because we don't have to. The state does already license it, and you will address land use on October 21. So do we want to regulate time, place, and manner? And if so, what you would like to see in an ordinance?
Thank you very much, City Attorney, for the presentation. Any questions from members of council? Go ahead, Member Ward.
A couple of questions. Regarding distancing regulations, are the only places we're allowed to distance from schools, childcare, and residential, or could we also distance from our existing marijuana dispensaries?
I will look that up and let you know. I can anticipate questions you might ask, but this is so new and I know nothing about it. So that's not something I looked up. So I will look that up and get back to you.
And going further down the regulatory path, if our voters were to approve it, would Englewood be entitled to charge and collect an excise tax on products or services delivered at these facilities, or is that prohibited by the proposition?
I will have to look that up and let you know. If I were to guess, I would say we can't because the law says we can only regulate time, place, and manner. But let me look.
Okay. I think those are the two big questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ward. Go ahead, Member Wright.
Thank you. Marrying off Member Ward, part of my concern is the locations that it would be allowed in would be only in the areas that marijuana, where it's sold, those areas. So where you mapped, I guess, my question is it in the same areas that marijuana sales areas are the same?
Well, that will actually be the subject of your October 21 hearing. But marijuana businesses do have a distance requirement from each other. But generally, I suppose it would be up to you after hearing on October 21 and then action to determine if it is allowed in the same zones where marijuana businesses are allowed.
Okay, so based on the information that you've given us today, let me rephrase this. Based on the information you gave us today, if you asked community development to map it out, here's my concern. There is a dispensary just down the block from me. I don't want a natural medicine clinic in the same neighborhood is my concern. I don't want everything lumped in the same neighborhood, exposing those neighborhoods to it. I have a couple questions that I wrote down actually. did P and Z have a public hearing? And my questions are, where are their recommendations? What you presented tonight, is that P and Z's recommendations?
But you will receive that on October 21. That's what the public hearing is. You'll discuss P and Z's recommendation for land use.
Okay.
And specifically what zones the city will allow these to operate in.
Okay, so the recommendations that you gave us for Englewood are kind of what you were thinking about then.
These would supplement the zoning decisions that you make. So after October 21, then the next meeting, you will decide what zones within the city you will allow these to operate. And then these would be supplemental to that. So let's say you allow these in our I industrial zone. Even if it's allowed in I would propose, even then, it still couldn't be within 1,000 feet of a child care center or a school.
Okay, so we have the option of saying 1,500 or even 2,000 feet if we choose. Okay,
Possibly.
that's what
But
I
we
need.
would want to map that because we can't prohibit it. We can't make our time, place, and manner restrictions so restrictive that there's no place in the city they're allowed. So would you like for me to look at a potentially 1,500?
I wouldn't mind that personally. I
Okay,
don't know if we have consensus, but I would like to see 1,500 myself.
I will research that to make sure that's allowed under the law. And then if so, then I will ask community development to map it to make sure there are still locations in the city where these businesses could operate.
Perfect, because my concern is we've already had a sale illegally to two minors. I believe they were pretty young, where they ended up in the hospital. I don't want to see that happening in Englewood, so, all right, thank you.
Member Prang?
I think Member Anderson was
It's
first.
fine either way.
Go ahead, Member Prang, and then I'll go
Okay.
to Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a few curious questions. Do we know what type of practitioner is allowed to do a guided dosing, if you will, within the clinics themselves?
Yes, the state has a pretty extensive licensure regulatory mechanism. They're called facilitators. And they have to, the state's very specific, they have to first give a kind of a cursory medical exam to make sure the person doesn't need mental or physical medical services. And then they can provide a dose on site. The person has to ingest it on site with the facilitator. And the facilitator then is also required to go through quite a bit of education and get certified to make sure it's a safe experience for the customer.
So
patient?
in addition to the licensing, then the state will create a certification program for those practitioners that work in these specific type of clinics.
They already have. I read the 105 pages of those regulations earlier today.
Great. I'm also curious, in cities that are maybe a little further along, with any of the time, place, and manner regulations, is there like an end time for dosing?
Actually, that came up in the presentation I attended 2 weeks ago. It was the city attorneys in Parker, Castle Rock, and Boulder did talk about that because the Parker city attorney specifically, who's the only city that has adopted this, stated that if someone doesn't take it early enough, apparently it can take 8 hours to get through your system. And so they've already talked about, is 8 to 5 enough time? But my thought on that is, like, when you go in for an outpatient procedure, they start you first thing in the morning so that you're done by 5 when the doctor goes home and you're out the door too. So I do think that it can fit within the hours of 8 to 5 if that's what council would like to see. But if that's a concern, we can certainly expand those hours as well. That is 100% within your discretion. Because what I've read says it can take up to 8 hours, I wouldn't suggest we do anything less than 8 hours, but
Right.
certainly we could do longer.
Yeah, I wouldn't be an advocate for less, and I'm not sure that I would advocate for more either, but us learning a little bit more about what those hours, if there are cities that are doing that differently and have longer than an 8 hour period, because if your business is closing at 5 and someone's not through their experience, then they're going out onto the streets and, potentially driving or whatever. So I would want to know a little bit more about that. I guess my last question would be, I just want to make sure that I understand correctly. Is personal cultivation allowed, yes or no? And if so, is there a cap on like how many plants you can cultivate in any personal space, residential setting?
Yes, it's my understanding personal cultivation is allowed under state law, up to 12 by 12 foot plots.
Okay.
And that's mirrored in the Arapahoe County regulations as well.
So however many plants can be planted in a 12 by 12 are allowed?
Well, let me double check that.
Okay.
I don't know enough about growing these to be able to tell you off the top of my head.
Okay.
But one of the things we discussed is if council had questions, we anticipated we could bring this back for a second study session at the end of October so that then we could be prepared to address an ordinance at the first meeting in November. So unless council disagrees, I will just plan to bring all of these questions back in a second study session.
Okay, thank you.
Bring these answers to these questions.
Yes. Yeah, I would prefer that. And then I guess one last comment, I would definitely be in favor of, if we do proceed with implementing an ordinance around this, with having the screening, so that public is not allowed to view inside of the business. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Prang. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. City Attorney, my question was just around the 1,000 feet. You said from schools, childcare, and residential. Is that any residential property?
Well, it would be up to city council.
What is that?
What we've seen from other cities is from areas zoned residential, whether single family or multifamily.
And has that been mapped? Yes, that's the one I see as providing the most restriction on that.
Yes, it has been mapped.
Okay, I'd be interested at the next study session to see the map.
Okay.
Thank you.
You'll be interested in seeing the 1,000 and 1,500 as well, or?
I'd be fine with seeing the 1,500, yeah, 1,500 as well, just seeing
Okay.
what's left after you go 1,000 feet from every residential.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. City Attorney, so I have a question, just now that Member Prang kind of brought it up. If it's 8 hours that it potentially could live in the system, is there a way that we can designate or somehow have it in the ordinance that if they're closing at 5 p.m., that they're no longer under the influence by the time they leave? So I'm just trying to figure out how we can word that in, because obviously we don't want them to just leave the premises still under the influence and then potentially be impacted, or the police being impacted by that type of situation. So just trying to figure out how we can, prevent that from happening.
We actually brainstormed that in our office today. And we, again, compared it to a medical procedure where the medical provider requires you to have a driver home and requires you to certify that you won't drive or operate heavy machinery when you leave because you still may be under the influence. And that's something that we would like to explore further in regulations. As far as still under the influence, this is so new. I don't know if
Right.
there's it's not like a breath test where we can see if somebody's safe to drive or something like that. But let me look into that and see how we could regulate it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious if Oregon looked into that as, part of your research into Oregon, if there's anything there that could help us make a determination on that. Thank you, City Attorney. Go ahead. Go ahead, Member Wright.
Thank you. To piggyback on the mayor also, could we look into possibly Oregon where it's mandatory that they have a designated driver if it's a medical type thing? My concern is, some people with the medical procedure, it takes longer for things to come out of their system. So what if it's 10 hours? What if it's 12 hours? I don't know. I don't even know how it's administered. Is it something they eat? Is it an injection? I mean, is it?
From the pictures I saw online, it appears to me it's a capsule. But
Okay.
I don't have any personal knowledge or
You know,
experience.
people digest things different, so it could take, 4 or 5 hours before something even starts for them because of digestive issues. So I would think that there should be something in there where, this is complicated. So I guess here's something that we need to think about. Is there, the facilitator, is there a peak point where we need to say, yes, there are certain circumstances where if it's administered by 9 a.m., but at 5 p.m., it is not safe for them to leave, and that facilitator and that patient, I guess, needs to stay. That happens at hospitals. We need to give that gift. It should be a rare. There needs to be designated drivers. But then my question also is, how are the police, has the state discussed, if someone does decide to drive, how are they doing driving under the influence type of things? Maybe Oregon could tell us how they're dealing with that also.
I actually have quite a bit of experience with DUI from my prior position in Kansas, and I also work for the Kansas Department of Revenue, presiding over DUI cases. So in cases where it's a natural medicine like this, to determine if someone is incapable of safely operating a motor vehicle, a police officer, after observing unsafe driving, generally will call what's called a DRE, or a drug recognition expert. And they will do standard field sobriety tests as well as additional tests to determine if they are under the influence to a degree that they are unsafe behind the wheel. And so that it's not an objective test like a breath test for your alcohol level, but it is a way that police can determine if someone is safe.
And then would these magic mushrooms be testable by a blood test if there's something in their system, if they say that they're willing to take that? It's complicated.
Yeah, generally they would be able to find it in a blood test, but they wouldn't be able to test it to say a certain amount in your blood means you're not safe, simply because people do
They're so different.
digest at a different rate.
Right.
Also, state law specifically allows facilitators to provide food and water, specifically including fruits and vegetables in the regulations. And that can also impact the ability to metabolize faster.
Interesting. It's going to be a ride, I think, for a couple of years.
Was Mayor Pro Tem, was your light on first or Member Russell's? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Going back to the map thing again, one other question I'd like answered when we come back is that include distance from schools and residential areas outside of the city? Maybe you already know.
We have mapped those as well.
Okay.
Member Russell.
Thank you. So my question is, if it is legal for an individual to grow it in their yard, what if they live in a residential area? Will they be able to grow it in their yard?
Yes, by state law, it's my understanding that they are allowed.
Okay, and
within
if they
their
can grow
residential
it,
property.
if they can grow it in their yard, what is keeping them from selling it to their neighbors or whoever they want to, and whatever is to keep them from using it in their own home?
So they can use it in their own home for personal use, but state law does prohibit them from selling it. So it can be cultivated for personal use for people over the age of 21, but no one under the age of 21 can have access to any of it. But state law specifically prohibits the selling of it unless you are licensed under the state. And the business side of it, the selling of it, the testing, the commercial cultivation, that's what our regulations are for.
Okay, and so what were you saying, the three things that we could, it's the
Time, place, and manner.
time, place, and manner. So the place will be determined by the public hearing on October 21st, correct?
Yes and no, because that will determine the zones under our land use code where it's allowed. But then if we did have 1,000 or 1,500 feet buffer, that would also limit the place as well.
Okay. And, I mean, if we get all the answers to our questions, we don't necessarily have to move forward with this until after the election, correct?
Yes, the downside of doing that though, and why I wouldn't recommend it, is because then our ordinances would not be in effect by December 31st. And so we presumably will have our land use issues. But if we wanted to do any sort of buffer, somebody could get licensed and potentially start a business in an area that is within 1,000 feet of a childcare facility. And because we didn't have a law in place, we couldn't then prohibit it. It would be a pre-existing use that could stay there.
Okay, and so I'm assuming November 5th is the election, correct? If we had it all ready to go, so how many meetings do we have in December? We'll have one more in November, right?
Yes, we
After
would
the
have,
5th.
and then two in December.
So, but if we passed it the next meeting after the election and then had second reading on the first meeting in December, it would be in effect, right, by the first of the year?
No, because then we have to publish notice and then it becomes effect 30 days after second publication. So it most likely it would be fine, but you would have a couple of days there. Because it could be adopted on second reading December 2nd. Generally, publication would be December 3rd, which means it would go into effect, roughly January 2nd. So it would be close. There would be a very small window for somebody to be able to fit a business in, but
So
would be
when does the 1st of January fall? Is it on a weekend? So it would not be a problem, right? If it
January 1 is a Wednesday.
is a Wednesday? Okay. So January 2nd is Thursday? Okay, thank you.
It's a tight window, so. Go ahead, Member Brang.
Thank you. I guess one follow-up question. So back to the personal cultivation in a residential setting, would it be allowed under the manor piece of it to require some sort of locked structure around growing it outside so that I'm just concerned, like if someone's got it growing in their backyard and we're trying to keep it out of the hands of people who are 21 and younger, that, someone could hop a fence and grab a plant or whatever they wanted. So would that be allowable under the manor piece?
Yes, it would. In fact, Parker has criminalized in their criminal code if they fail to enclose and lock their personal cultivation area to ensure no one else can access it. So that is certainly something we could mirror.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, any further questions from members of council? City Attorney Niles, did you need further direction on this? I am happy with what you presented here in terms of some of the structure. I am interested in some of the other areas that we discussed as the council tonight. But overall, I think that this is a good first step. So any other members of council want to weigh in or have a different opinion there? All right. So then we can expect to see this in a couple of weeks. Is that the timeline? So
Yes,
what, the 21st?
I'll see what study sessions we already have scheduled on the 21st, if we can fit this on. Otherwise, it will be the 28th. So,
Correct. So yeah, so 21st is a council meeting and then 28th we have a study session, all night study session.
and I will just share some informal information I received that generally the healing centers or where it's ingested on site, Englewood would not be a typical location because we are all city. We don't have
Right.
any rural areas within our city. Generally, it's my understanding that when someone's taking this, they're looking for a quiet, calm area with no traffic noise, no police sirens. So as staff, we would be surprised if someone is seeking to place that natural healing center where they actually take it on site and have their experience. We would expect more to see perhaps cultivation or testing or the more manufacturing side of it, given our larger industrial areas. But that's just something I've heard in passing, and so I thought I would pass it along. I'm not 100% sure that's true.
Thank you very much for all the research on this, City Attorney Niles.
Yeah, I learned a lot today. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, everyone, we are going to take a break. We will commence with the regular agenda at the top of the hour, so we got about 25 minutes. All right, see you then.
So many. Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, it's fine.
All right, everyone, we back on. I call this meeting to order. If you're able to do so, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. City Clerk, if you could please take roll call.
Yes, good evening. Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Present?
Member Noonekamp, Member Prang,
Present.
Member Russell,
Present.
Member Ward,
Present.
Member Wright,
Present.
Mayor Sierra.
Present.
6 members present, 1 absent.
Thank you. Member Noonekamp did let me know she would be out for tonight. Moving on to 5A, minutes from the regular city council meeting of September 16th. Any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from September 16th?
I move to approve the minutes from September 16th.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Prang,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to recognition. Tonight, the city would like to recognize the Englewood Municipal Court Restorative Justice Program volunteers. The Englewood Municipal Court Restorative Justice Program provides opportunities for victim-centered, community-based responses to a crime by offering facilitated conversations between responsible parties, harmed parties, and community members, which create opportunities for accountability, repairing harm, and restoring relationships. Volunteers have diligently supported the Restorative Justice Program from the 2020 inception through conversations and through current program implementation. Currently, there are 60 active volunteers, with more than 30% being Englewood residents. They have participated in over 100 restorative justice conferences and in total volunteered more than 1,600 hours since June 2020. The Restorative Justice Program cannot function without community volunteers. Program volunteers serve in a variety of roles within the restorative justice conferences, such as facilitator, community member, or a surrogate harm party. Volunteers also participate in initial and ongoing restorative justice training and practice sessions, serve on the program advisory team, and support a variety of administrative projects. Thank you to all the Restorative Justice Program volunteers for sharing your time, energy, and wisdom with the Restorative Justice Program and Englewood community. There's that echo. If Ames Stenson, I'm not sure if there's any words from the program volunteers would like to say any few words, or just anyone from the Restorative Justice Program.
Hi, Council. Thank you so much for the recognition of our amazing program volunteers. I actually misspoke initially when I sent in our application. There's actually 49% of our volunteers are Englewood residents. And in doing the cost around how much money one volunteer hour is worth, if you will, nationwide, it's actually 1 hour of volunteer service is worth $33.49. Which means that our volunteers have put in worth $53,000, $53,500 of service since we've started in 2020. So just a huge recognition. We have folks that are 15 years old all the way through their 70s that are really committed to this. And I just want to give them an opportunity if anybody wants to share with you some of their experiences. So thank you.
Thank you very much. If anybody, yeah. Not sure if anyone else wants to share, but thank you very much for volunteering and putting this program into place. I know, Your Honor, Joe Jefferson, that this is something that you've been really preaching over the years, so really appreciate everything that you have done for the city. I would love to take a picture with all of you if you guys would allow us the honor. So I do have a certificate for you. I'm not sure if there are any other words tonight. Oh yeah, please, please move forward.
Here I am. I just want to know if it's within the rules for us just to hoot and holler for this program, because we love it. It's our privilege to be in it. We are changed through every encounter we have, and everyone in the circles that join with us are changed. The skills that are learned and the healing that occurs. is really impressive and unimaginable. And we would love to have all of you come and take a training and participate. And I think Ames has said the rest. So thank you so much for
No.
having us.
Yeah, thank you.
And can we hoot and holler?
You can hoot and holler. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Kate Redford, and I just wanted to thank you guys for having us this evening. I wrote a short thing because I tend to be long-winded. My experience with the Restorative Justice Program has brought me deep humility and a profound feeling of being one with my community. I joined the program to make a difference, to be of service to my community, and to help the people in my community avoid the emotional, physical, and financial costs of the criminal justice system. I consider my participation to be one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done in my life, and I want to thank you, Englewood, and thank Ames and all the RJ volunteers for providing this opportunity for our community.
Thank you so much. All right, if everybody would.
I just want to take a brief opportunity, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your kind comments on the program, but I just wanted to highlight the really great work done by our program manager, Ann Stimson. They have been a true champion of the community as well as these restorative justice philosophy, if you will, here in Englewood, and has really proven this model here in Englewood. And I think we couldn't do it alone without these volunteers. This truly is a community-based effort, and without their efforts, we really could not be successful to prove this model, which I think really is the best restorative justice model that is municipal court restorative justice model here in Colorado. So I just want to give them a great round of applause. Thank you.
Yeah. You wouldn't mind coming up here right in front of the guys? All right, everyone, we're moving on to recognition of public comment. This is an opportunity to address City Council. Excuse me. There is an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue, and please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. Englewood residents must provide address or cross streets. Non-Englewood residents must just provide the name of their city. If you have addressed council in the last 90 days, you would be moved to the bottom of the list, and written materials may be submitted to the city clerk in advance or at the meeting. Audiovisual materials must be submitted to the city clerk by 5 p.m. on the Thursday prior to the meeting, and public comment will be limited to 90 minutes in total for tonight. Up first, let me see where we're at. It's the next page. We have Allison Crowley here to address council. Good evening, Allison. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
My name is Allison Crowley, and I live on the corner of Inca and Mansfield.
Thank you. You may begin when you're ready.
I'm here to address a nuisance property located at 3920 South Inca. Those who have lived in this neighborhood have witnessed the absolute demise of this property for decades. Police we've spoken to have also advised that as long as they've been in the Englewood Police Force, this house has been an issue. While I'm sure there are other problem properties all over Englewood, unfortunately, I want to share why this property is unique and needs to be addressed as a possible threat to this community. Issues at this property have been ongoing. There's no way in 3 minutes that I can explain every instance we've observed in the last 2 years since purchasing our home. However, here's a summary of the concerns of this property. We've previously contacted Adult Protective Services several times over concerns of this homeowner's well-being and care, recently following a violent dog attack in August where the homeowner was placed in the hospital. I am unaware if the homeowner will return to this house or will need further care beyond what they can provide themselves. The dog was euthanized due to this not being the first instance of attack. They fail to secure their dogs, which are often seen running loose in the neighborhood and escaping into other yards. Most notable, there is ongoing criminal and suspicious activity among the individuals who live at this address and visiting this house. I've overheard verbal arguments between individuals living at this house, threatening violence to one another. There have been reports of fights, thefts, and gunshots. They have called the police on one another. One individual is well known by local police force and is constantly in and out of jail. We observe people constantly arrested at this house, and most recently there was a shelter in place that went out to our neighbors. We have observed many suspicious individuals in and out of this house, some even loitering on the block and in our yard. It is allegedly used as a trap house, which is a place where illicit drugs are bought, sold, and used. We see multiple suspicious individuals in and out of this house at all hours of the day, night, and into the early morning. We even return to our house at times and wake up to strangers loitering in our yard. Police presence at this house is constant. Over the 2 years we've lived here, police are there several times a month, sometimes even in 1 week. This house is using up time, money, and resources of our local police force. From our front window, we have observed individuals completing hand-to-hand drug deals and open drug usage in their front yard and in vehicles at the house and on the street. We suspect drug contamination at this property and have also reached out to the building department with concerns of the state of this house. Lastly, multiple code enforcement issues. I would like to thank Englewood Code Enforcement for their prompt response, follow-up, and action on all those matters. This house constantly has junk, scrap, and trash on the side of their house in their driveway, all visible from the street. The back of their house has been condemned, as well as their back garage, which the garage, as far as I know, is still currently condemned. The activities at this property have caused an unreasonable interference with the use and enjoyment of my property and those on the 3900 block of South Inca. The individuals in this community are concerned for their safety. These individuals are ruthless and have no shame over continuing their activities despite constant police presence, surveillance, and arrests. My ask is that this nuisance property is abated to the fullest extent of the law. I ask that the individuals at this property are no longer able to use this location for their alleged criminal activities. And lastly, I just want to thank Englewood Police Department, Code Enforcement, the Fire Marshal, and Arapahoe County
Allison, thank you for your
Protective
time tonight.
Services.
Your 3 minutes are up. We do have questions for you. We'll start with Member Wright.
Thank you. I just want to confirm it's the 3900 South Inca block that it's at?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And one more question. Is it the same people or are you seeing a rotation of people coming in and out of there that live there?
Both.
Both, okay. Thank you.
Allison, just a quick question. So you did state that there is an adult that requires adult protective services. Do you know if that person is the person that owns the property?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any further questions for members of council?
Do
Go ahead,
please.
Member Wright.
Okay. So the person with adult protective services was taken out and has not returned is what you said, correct?
As far as I know, they are either currently still in the hospital or have been deemed unfit to care for themselves and possibly in assisted living.
Okay. And then, do you know then if possibly the other people there are related or just, I know it's,
Some are related and some are not.
okay, all right, that's what I needed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Allison. Thank you for coming tonight. Up next is Regan Benson with no topic given. Good evening, Regan. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Good evening, council. I'm not giving you my cross streets or my address, but it is good to see you again. I want to talk to you about all those things that we've talked about in the past as far as the criminalization that you've... Excuse me.
No, Regan.
This is my time.
Regan,
excuse me. This is my time.
Regan, if you can please
I'm
stop.
going to make public comment, and I'm going to do it for 3 minutes uninterrupted. And if you interrupt me, I'm going to talk louder.
Regan, I asked you just to state the city that you reside in.
Standing up here,
Mayor, the
and
speaker
talking
is
to you
interrupting
about
the meeting.
criminalization that you started down in the library
Call of order.
on me.
Regan, call
Guess
of order.
what?
Regan, please stay. Regan, can you please stop speaking?
Mayor, can I ask that we take a break?
I agree. So city council is going to take a break while the city attorney and the police department figure out a way to control the situation. Thank you.
And I'd like to invite anyone that would like to come to that hearing on the record here tonight. It is public comment time. I don't know why the city council is getting up and leaving the dais. That's interesting, but that's okay. I'll keep talking to the members that are staying. You've heard me talk before I told you it's coming. And nobody's going to be serious.
Miss Benson, your time is up.
Is my time up?
Your time is up. Miss Benson, I'm asking you to leave. Miss Benson, Miss Benson, you have violated council policy.
You coward!
I'm asking you to leave.
I'm not leaving.
For the record, let it be known that I have asked Miss Benson to leave the council meeting. And we will now move on to the next speaker. We have Matt Crabtree here to talk about ballot issues.
Mayor, before we proceed with Mr. Crabtree, can we please confirm that the live stream is happening right now?
Sure. City Clerk, is the live stream occurring? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Apologies, Mr. Crabtree. When you are ready, if you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Good evening, Matt Crabtree. Excuse me. I'm at Sherman and Cornell.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. We'll be speaking to you tonight regarding an update on the 2 citizen-led ballot initiatives, which will be on the November ballot. These are charter initiatives. We, more for the benefit of the audience and the public that's listening from home, ballot initiative 301 has been assigned and 302 has been assigned to our issues. 301 will provide, if passed, the Englewood voters the opportunity to directly elect the mayor of the city of Englewood. Whereas ballot initiative 302 will change council procedures and how vacancies are filled. Specifically, how council seats are filled requiring a 75% supermajority vote. If no decision is made within 30 days and a vacancy occurs more than 6 months from the next election, a special election will be held. So that's more of an update for the community and the benefit of city council here that those ballot numbers have been assigned. I do have one more request, and I would like to see council, if supported this evening, a resolution in support for ballot issue 301, which would be the direct election of the mayor by the people of Englewood. So I'd like to request that. And apart from that, that's all I have.
Mr. Crabtree, thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions for Mr. Crabtree? Seeing none, Mr. Crabtree, thank you for your time tonight. Up next is Jan Weipert here to also speak about the ballot. Good evening, Ms. Weipert. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Jan Weipert off of Federal in Bellevue. So let's see. First of all, I want to say yes, this group is discriminatory. You allow loud applause when you want, which was indicative at the beginning of the council meeting, but I can't applaud to say I agree with something. And it isn't that we're asking to be able to boo, but you don't even let us say, hey, we're in agreement. So you have no idea what these people think out here. So you are discriminatory. So I wanted to talk a little bit about ranked choice voting, which I see is going to be talked about again tonight. First, I would urge you to just table it until after the election. It's on the state ballot for the state, and I would suggest you table that until we see what the overall state feeling is on that. Secondly, I've got a few items that I think are huge on this as far as oversight and what to look at before it goes through. Monetary concerns. Arapahoe County specifically said they don't know how much it will cost. Although their software will do our ranked choice voting, they have no idea what it'll cost to put it into effect. When we looked at the water issue in Englewood, everything was supposedly a go. And look how long that has taken and it's still not up and running correctly. So are you going to do that with our election system? You're going to put us in a system that has not been out and tried? It's only effective in 63 cities and municipalities across the USA, not in Colorado. So you're talking about using us as a guinea pig. And I think, just making that arbitrary decision is really, really poor government, which you've already voted through once. The other thing is that there's no one ranked choice voting process. There are many different choices in terms of putting it together to have it. If you just throw it through again, like you did already, or tried to, you are not looking at governance. You're looking at throwing something that you want to see in there. You need to decide how it's going to be handled and what the processes and procedures are around it, at the very least. And my opinion is it should go to a vote of the people in Englewood. And also, have you budgeted training time? It's an extremely complex system. In some places, up to 50% of ballots have been thrown out of a vote because people didn't know what they were doing. So those are things you need to pay attention to. Please have a good night, and I wish I could applaud myself.
Thank you, Ms. Weipert, for your time tonight. Any questions for Ms. Weipert? Seeing none, thank you for coming tonight. And last is Rebecca Kramer to speak about Complete Streets. Good evening, Rebecca. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Rebecca Kramer. I'm at Lafayette and Floyd. I had the opportunity to attend the Complete Streets public gathering at Grow and Gather on the 25th. And I also had the opportunity to speak to Rachel, the engineer, the week before. I had called with some questions, and she called me back very quickly. We had a very nice conversation for about a half an hour. I'd looked at the plans, and I was able to voice some of my concerns with the redesign. What I would ask for tonight, I found the perfect opportunity to implement something that Steve Ward has talked about multiple times, and is that before we implement this project, we have the opportunity to put up some temporary barriers, because one of the parts of the project is to eliminate all of the parking on both sides of Old Hamden. And that street serves many purposes. It enters the medical district, so ambulances, due to the traffic problems on 285, take the jump off and go down Old Hamden until they reach Logan, and then take a right turn, go over to Girard, and get to the ER. One situation that could occur should the parking be removed is that there will be nowhere for people to pull over and let ambulances and fire engines and other emergency vehicles proceed when they're coming down the streets. If the medians are put into place between the blocks and there's someone making a left-hand turn and there's nowhere for anyone to pull over, it may back those ambulances up for a severe period of time. In 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, people die in an ambulance in that time. It will also restrict the ability for RTD to be able to pull over and load and unload at the bus stops and allow traffic to continue through. There are ADA considerations. I've heard Kim speak to the lack of ADA accommodations, especially in the medical district. There are people in the different apartment houses and multifamily structures that have ADA, RTD transportation, and they pull over and use that parking to load and offload people in wheelchairs. I also believe that the businesses, the restaurants along there may suffer because they will have nowhere for their box trucks to pull over to make deliveries so that they can receive the items they need to produce their meals. And I think that they could also suffer because there won't be any parking available for patrons to be able to go in and eat at those businesses. We have a really unique little spot up there, but this is the perfect chance to put in temporary barriers to simulate the removal of the parking on each side of the street, even if it's just for 2 weeks, and actually study traffic flow to make sure before we spend millions of dollars on redesign.
Rebecca, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Okay.
2 minutes are up. Any questions for members of council? I have one for you. Go ahead, Member Wright. Go ahead. I was going to ask, so you were able to attend the open house for Complete Streets.
Yes, I was.
Did you bring up any of these potential temporary, just temporary barriers or any of these suggestions to the engineer, Rachel, when you spoke?
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
And what was the feedback from?
There were a lot of people there. She was answering a lot of questions, so she really didn't have a lot of time to address it. We did have a 30, 40-minute call the week before, and I spoke to these same issues with her personally on the phone. Having lived in that area since '78 and being familiar with it, I believe this is an incredible opportunity for the city to put into place what Steve has talked about so many times, is that we try it out before we buy it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Member Wright.
Thank you. In the conversation, was anything said about EDA laws with RTD and stuff like that? You bring up a good point and something that's passionate to me.
Most of the issues that I've brought up tonight were not things that she stated that they weren't things that she had considered when she had done the designs.
Okay, because I think there's probably major
they're
laws there.
pretty. I just don't think they're functional for that area, especially with all the emergency traffic.
Right. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with no further questions, Rebecca, thank you very much for your time. All right, and that concludes public comment tonight. Member Wright, when you are ready, you can give a response.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone that has attended this evening. For once, I don't have 20 people that I'm responding to. Ms. Crowley, I'm gonna be putting in some council request regarding the issue that you brought up this evening. I have a list of questions, so I have to be thoughtful in the request, and some fellow members may be putting in some requests also. Mayor, can I do those now, or do I need to wait?
You can say them now if you like, it,
Okay.
so we make sure that we cover them.
Okay, so the first request I would like is how many times we have had officers, code enforcement, out there, and how many abatements have there been? And I guess the other question I would be is, what other actions can we as a city take for this property that, could be a major problem for this neighborhood, that we could help this neighborhood at this time? So we'll start looking into that and seeing. I'm not sure all that we could do, but definitely look and seeing what we can as a city. Ms. Benson, I can't comment. You mentioned that you have a hearing coming up on Wednesday. I have to leave it at that because justice has to do what it does. Mr. Crabtree, you said the initiatives. I will, at council members' choice, I will bring up and ask for the resolution on the elected mayor. I'll bring that up at the end of the meeting and see if we have council's blessing on that. It is something that I support. Ms. Weipert, I can't really comment on your comments with ranked choice voting since it is something that we'll be discussing this evening, but I am very thankful for the points that you brought up this evening. Looks like there's a lot of research that you put into it. Ms. Kramer, more council requests, please. I would like to know the ADA laws, that if we've looked into them for the complete streets. And I would like more discussion on this. I believe Ms. Kramer has brought up a lot of good questions to this. I've written them all down, and I thank you for being thoughtful and bringing this up. So thank you, everybody that's been here this evening. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Member Wright. Member Russell.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody that came out. I just have, want to add to the council request at 3920 South Inc., I believe. I think that PD has ways of how they declare nuisance properties. Is there enough evidence for a nuisance property to be declared? The other question that I have is this, what is the process for dealing with a nuisance property? So if we could get those two, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. One last thing for me, and Ms. Wiper, thank you very much for bringing it up. Regarding the ring change, I noticed that we have it on the agenda for tonight. So the discussion is really going to be to understand from members of council what information they need in order to make in order for it to come back as part of a study session. That is it. So we're only going to be speaking about what information is still required so that the city clerk, city attorney can provide that information at a future study session. I don't think we have it on the agenda, so it probably will be after the election. But there is going to be no vote or no election, or there's going to be no ring change voting happening in the near future. So we just want to have a discussion on it. So I noticed that title may have given a little bit of a different context for what we were discussing tonight. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And with that, we are done with public comments. We are moving on to consent agenda items. There's 2 items being pulled, 9A2 and 9C1. Are there any others? All right. Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9A1, 9B1, and 2?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Pring. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Pring.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Perfect. 9A2, we have There we go. We have Sustainability Program Manager Melissa England and Deputy Director of Operations and Maintenance Ron Thornton. Member Russell, you had a question regarding the Charge Ahead Colorado Intergovernmental Agreement.
Good evening. So my question is, who will be responsible for safety at these locations? I have had a lot of complaints about the charging station beside King Soopers. And I've heard a lot of reports about electrical vehicles being catching on fire, but also just the safety in these locations, I think, is paramount for us to understand as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members, for your time. Happy to answer that question. So after speaking with the city attorney's office, for the question of who's responsible for safety at these locations, the city has no obligation to provide safety, and individuals are responsible for their own safety. But on that note, there are some safety measures I do want to highlight. So at each of the 5 locations, there is street or parking lot lighting for all of them. I'm really glad you bring up the King Soopers one. I've heard that too, of people kind of feeling unsafe because of the shrubbery and the trees. You can't really see around it. At all 5 of the locations that we have, it is a clear sight of vision around. You can see if someone's lurking. You can see if there's kind of danger around. I'll also say for additional safety for EVs when they're charging, they can be run for heat and cooling. So if it's really hot, really cold outside, you can be inside very comfortable and warm or cool. And another thing to add is that the grant requires 5-year warranty, which is reflected in the price that you see in the city council memo. So all of those units are under a 5-year warranty for those.
So, and I didn't write this down, but I've been thinking about this. I know that you will charge a fee for the electricity, correct? Not for use of or will there also be a fee for use of the charging station?
Yeah, so it's a fee to use the charging station. We don't have that cost right now because the project, if approved, will not be completed until 2025. So we would consult with Xcel Energy to see what those rates would be. A lot of folks use time of use rates. So if it's peak time, then you charge more than off-peak time. But that would be just to cover that electricity cost, whatever it may be, but not to seek any revenue from the chargers.
And so would there be like a credit card thing that you pay for it with, or?
So you can use an app or you can use a credit card for it, so either option.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Any further questions? Go ahead, Member Pring.
Thank you, since it's already been pulled. I do have a couple of questions. So it looks like the locations that have been determined are largely, with the exception of one, I think, south of Hamden. Is there a plan to eventually have any other sites in the north end of the city? Is that an issue for us?
From my understanding and my knowledge working with Public Works, these are the only 5 that we're looking at to have the public charger. And then if the private market wants to open up and sees a need for those, absolutely. Through the electric vehicle action plan that we did in 2023, we have a really useful map that we've shared with the Chamber of Commerce and we've shared with Drive Clean Colorado, a nonprofit that does electric vehicle education and outreach. And it shows areas that are by high dense multifamily, which would be great areas for it. These 5 public EV chargers hit a lot of those areas around there.
Okay, thank you for that. And then also, do we have any data on how many owners of electric vehicles there are in the city? And is this number sufficient to serve what's here already? I saw in your presentation there was a statement about, the influx of EVs, but I also have seen lots of articles discussing the fact that sales of EVs have really slowed significantly. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on kind of long-term, like will these 5 new stations kind of complete us, at least for this region for now, for current owners of EVs to be able to service who lives here already?
Thank you for that question. There is that data. I don't have it. I'm happy to find it for you of how many EVs are registered for, I believe, Arapahoe County. It could get as specific as Englewood. And for these 5 locations, they have really high visitor numbers. So I feel like they're going to capture a lot of folks. And then if there are any gap areas of needing to grow, we're really hoping that the private market sees that as a great financial opportunity and covers those steps. But this will at least give us a good cushion for when it does grow, and the Englewood residents will be like, hey, we have absolutely no chargers around here for us to use. It really gives residents a choice of what vehicle they would like to use.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Go ahead, Member Russell.
I just have one more question then. What if we don't put them all in at the same time and see how successful it is? I mean, perhaps choose the one that we think would be most visited and then add, but if not very many people end up using it, I'm assuming a lot of people that have electric cars plug them in their garage or in their driveway.
I can speak on 2 different fronts. So one, City of Sheridan that I also work for, they have fast chargers. And they're a really small community, high-low income community, and they're seeing good traction on that fast charger, which we were very happy to see. And then also as an EV owner myself, back when I used to rent, I didn't have access to a charger. And so I would go to public EV chargers and it was really helpful. So they can serve a lot of clientele.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9A2?
Move to approve 9A2.
Thank you, Member Prang. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments? I guess I'll speak up on this item. This is just an IGA, so I definitely believe that there's a definite need here as an EV owner as well, and Ms. England kind of spoke to some of the uses for it. I personally don't use public chargers that often because I do charge at home for the most part, but whenever I do drive quite a distance, that's when I would use it. Renters are going to be the ones that are going to be the primary users of this that don't have a garage themselves, or their apartment complex does not provide charging stations. They're going to be the ones that are going to have to use this. And for these to be in high visibility locations such as the rec center and other public spaces, it makes a lot of sense. I wish that the King Soopers charging stations worked more effectively than they do, because that is the perfect location for EV chargers, because normally when you charge, you go and do other things, either go eat dinner, go eat lunch, or run errands. So that is the perfect location, but unfortunately when Electrify America and Volkswagen rolled those out, they didn't really think through their entire process, and so those Electrify America charging stations have just given the whole charging station a bad rap. But we learned with ChargePoint and some of the other public companies that there's a better way of doing this. So I think we learned our lessons after Electrify America rushed out their implementation. But I would be in support of this, and I'm hoping that we, as a council, look forward to moving forward with getting charging stations across the city. So anything else from members of council? If not, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much, Ms. England. Up next is 9C1, and this is the resolution setting the city attorney and city manager 2025 compensation. We have City Attorney Niles, and Member Russell, you have a question on this.
Yes. My question is on the resolutions for the salary increases. Why are these not separate resolutions?
They have been a single resolution since 2021. So this would be multiple years where it's been combined into a single resolution. We did this simply for efficiency purposes because it's double the amount of staff time to draft a resolution and put into iCompass and approve to iCompass, and for City Council to address separately when the purpose of the resolution and the whereas clauses were always the same.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9C1?
Move to approve 9C1.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Ward. Any further comments?
I actually do have a comment.
Go ahead, Member Russell.
I cannot support this. Both the city manager and the city attorney have gotten pretty substantial raises in the last year or year and a half. And I think there is a lot of problems going on in the community right now, and that are, I feel, not being addressed, or deflection is occurring. And so I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Any further comments from members of council? I will be in support of the resolution tonight for many of the reasons I've given in the past. So I would be happy to support the 9C1 and the additional compensation for our city attorney and city manager. So, and with that, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Nay.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes and 1 nay.
Thank you so much. There's no public hearing items for tonight. We're moving on to 11A1. Do we have Director of Finance? Oh, there we are. We got Director of Finance Kevin Ingles and Budget Manager Jennifer Nolan. First up is going to be CB 43. This is Budget Ordinance First Reading of the Englewood Budget. Good evening, Mr. Ingles.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kevin Ingles, Director of Finance. As you mentioned, also with us this evening is Budget Manager Jenny Nolan. We have 5 ordinances in front of you this evening related to the 2025 budget. 2 are for the city. It's an appropriation ordinance and a budget ordinance. 2 are for the South Platte Renew, a joint venture. Again, 1 is an ordinance for the budget and 1 is for the appropriation. And the final ordinance is to set the property tax mill levy for 2025. We don't have a separate presentation, but we do have staff available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ingles. Any questions for members of council? Go ahead, Member Russell.
Thank you. So my question really is, the total sources of funds is 70,833,810. The total uses of funds is 75,522,781. It's not really balanced. I mean, we have to take money from someplace else to balance it, correct?
Yeah, we're drawing down the surplus of unassigned fund balance that's built up over the past years.
Okay. And have we done that in the past? I mean, I know we have in the last couple of cycles, but let's say in the past 10 years.
So since 2019, council has appropriated over 22 million for capital projects, and a lot of that has come from unassigned fund balance.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Any further questions for members of council? Go ahead, Member Wright.
Thank you. Looking at this, for each department, does this include any raise that somebody would be getting?
It does include 2% raise for salaries for 2025.
Okay, does this include the judges' 2025 raise?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so I don't know if this question is appropriate for you or for the council. The process that we had to go through for his raise that was just approved in June for 2024, do we have to go through that process again, or are we approving his raise now? Anybody?
I'm trying to think. So it's a good question, Member Wright. So trying to think of how we followed the process last year. It was delayed. Go ahead, Member Russell.
I just would like to, wasn't the process originally that he would come and present in December? The city manager and the mayor decide that? Is that how that, we didn't follow that last year.
I thought there was something in the charter, and I'm sorry, Director Ingles. I just need to clarify if it's in here and it's being approved, or I don't want it to be postponed for 6 months, I guess is my question.
Right, exactly. So that, I think that falls on my shoulders in terms of just getting that squared up. But yes, the judge actually should have been part of the budget conversations leading up to this point. That did not happen, but we do need to have a meeting with them before the end of the year.
The city attorney.
Go ahead, City Attorney Niles.
City Council has adopted in its council policies the process to follow. And this is on page 22 of the council policies that City Council just readopted in August. It states the municipal judge shall meet annually with City Council to discuss the budget. Then the municipal judge, in coordination with the city manager and the Human Resources Department, shall conduct an annual salary survey of similar highest-ranking judges of courts of comparable operations within the Denver Metro. Then the judge shall provide a list of comparables to the city manager and HR. Then City Council then shall annually determine appropriate compensation by resolution.
Okay, so I guess my question is, since we just did that, do we have to do it again?
We do, for the 2025 year, yes.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, Member Wright. Member Prank, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm just wanting to clarify based on Member Wright's question. Right now, tonight, we're simply voting on the budget and the appropriation, which is inclusive of a 2% increase for all city staff and our elected honorable judge, right? Cool. So then we would follow the process in council policy when the appropriate time approaches in 2025. Okay, thank you.
Member Ward.
So I have more of a global question, and I've asked you this question a few times, but the state of the economy right now, in my opinion, is a bit tenuous. And this year, as Member Russell pointed out, we're spending $5 million, roughly more than what we're taking in. How frequently can we expect you to check in, and at what point do we make adjustments if revenue projections if actual revenue doesn't meet projections?
We'll review that monthly with council as we do the monthly reports. So, yeah, we can certainly have that conversation as often as you'd like.
Okay.
We're watching it very closely as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any further questions for members of council? I know we have 6 items to approve tonight on this, but we'll start with the first one. Can I get a motion to approve CB 43, the 2025 budget ordinances for the City of Englewood 2025 budget?
I move to approve CB 43.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Any further comments? All right, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem. Oh, you were just, okay. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Pring.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you so much. Moving on to CB 44. This is 2025 budget ordinance, first reading for the City of Englewood 2025 appropriations. Nothing new to add there. Director of Finance Kevin Ingles. Can I just get a motion to approve 11A2?
I move to approve CB 44.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Ward. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Pring.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Still aye.
Okay, Mayor Sierra. Thank
Aye.
you. 6 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to CB 47. This is the 2025 property tax mill levies. Any questions on this one before I just ask for a motion to approve? There is, okay.
I do,
Because I
please.
kind of wondered that we might have some on the next ones, but we got Director of Finance Kevin Ingles, and then Member Wright, you have a question regarding this.
I do. The mill levies get me. I was trying to figure out on the police department headquarters, how much is it that we still owe? And then it seems that they use a $500,000 home as the median amount on payment. How much is that costing based on a $500,000 home, the payment on the property tax?
Sure. I'm going to have Budget Manager Nolan come up, and I think she has that information.
Thank you.
Alrighty. For a $500,000 home, what we're anticipating, just for the debt service, and that's I don't know what page number the document is, but so for the police headquarters, it's going to be around $71 a year.
Okay,
So it'll be like the second subtotal that you see.
okay.
And
And
then,
then what is the general fund operations? Is that? What does that go to, I guess? Because it says on here,
Oh, the general fund operations, that's the 5.88 mils.
yes, yes.
And so that's our general property tax, and I think we have budgeted for 2025, $6.3 million.
Okay, I got it. So that's just what Arapahoe County gives us from collected property taxes?
Yes, per the levy that we assess.
Okay, I got it.
And then the
Okay.
2.122 equates to that $71 per year
Okay,
for a $500,000 home.
okay, I got it. Okay, now I understand.
And that's around 2.2 million
Okay,
that we collect on debt service.
okay. All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Member Ward.
Ms. Nolan, just a couple more questions on the mill levy, because I think this often does cause some confusion. This is page 134 of our packet that you have this summary sheet that shows the property tax calculations. The mill levy for debt service is, in a way, variable as far as the number of mills, because it has to generate a fixed amount of revenue. But the general mill levy is fixed based on what our voters have previously authorized the actual mill levy to be. So that number of mills won't change, although the revenue generated from it will change from time to time. And the police debt service is the opposite. The amount of revenue it generates has to be constant, which means that the total mill may fluctuate based on the value of properties in the city. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Member Russell.
Thank you. Member Ward kind of stole my thunder. But because mine was about the 5.88 mils being fixed and the fact that we have generated more income to the general fund this year because the value of houses is higher, or is this the same amount that we generated last year?
It's about the same amount as last year. The reason being is we're not anticipating much change in assessed valuations since it's a non-appraisal year.
Okay.
Appraisal years are every odd number of years, so in 2025 will be the next appraisal year, and we'll see any little bump in 2026.
Okay.
But
It could
again-
either go up or down depending on what happens to the housing market.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11A3 CB47?
I move to approve 11A3.
Thank you, Member Russell. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to CB45. This is South Platte Renew 2025 budget. Any questions for members of staff? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve CB45?
Move to approve CB45.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Ward. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you so much. Moving on to CB46. This is the South Platte Renew 2025 appropriation. Any questions for members of staff? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve CB46?
Move to approve CB46.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Director Ingles, Ms. Nolan, those are all 6 items for tonight. I know we still have to go through a second reading, but thank you very much for all the work that you and staff and the department heads put through this for the, since going back to March, talking about this every single meeting just about. No, thank you very much for all the work that went into this. Director Ingles, anything to add?
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. All right, everyone, we're moving on. Anyone need a break or we're good to move forward? All right, moving forward. So we got approval of second ordinance CB 17. We have City Attorney Tamara Niles. This is the amendment to municipal code regarding maximum penalties to align with state law. City Attorney Niles, anything to add from the last discussion?
No, Mayor Sierra, this is the second reading of this item, but of course I would take any questions.
Okay, perfect. Any questions from members of council? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I have one question for the city attorney on this. What is we talked last time about, there's a 14th Amendment issue with this. Can you explain exactly what creates the 14th Amendment issue?
Sure. Happy to do that. The 14th Amendment guarantees equal protection under the law so that someone is treated equally by jurisdictions. In the 14th Amendment issue in this case is that someone could commit a crime that's illegal under both state law and city law because our laws often mirror each other. And the problem is for the same crime in the same location, if they are prosecuted in district court, they receive one penalty, fine, jail sentence. In municipal court, they can receive a different penalty, fine, and jail sentence. So the problem is if, say, municipal court happens to sentence someone to 10 days in jail, but a district court would never sentence them to jail at all, they have an argument that they did not receive equal protection under the law, that it should have been the same. So that's the 14th Amendment issue, that people aren't treated equally depending on where they are prosecuted.
And follow up on that, could we rectify that issue by not changing our penalties, but instead requiring that our police send them to either district court or municipal court, one or the other, just so there's consistency in how the law is implemented?
That could be a potential way to address it. In general, police have discretion to file a case in either jurisdiction when it's called concurrent jurisdiction, when we have the same law in municipal code as we do in state law. There can be quite a few reasons I can think of why we wouldn't want to impact that. For example, maybe the officer wants to send defendants to the restorative justice program because they feel that the city's restorative justice program may have a better impact, may have a better result, and maybe the state court doesn't have that program. Or perhaps someone has gone to district court for an offense 3 times and they keep repeating it, so maybe they want to try municipal court. Maybe that will have a better resolution for them. So there are reasons why I would advise against that, but it's certainly a novel approach.
Thank you.
Member Ward?
I read through the brief that the judge attached to tonight's packet, and I looked up the case in courts so that I could see the briefs from both sides. And one of the things that confuses me a little bit about the intricacies of this equal protection argument is that if the state prescribed a lower penalty, the claim is that if the municipality gives a higher penalty, then there's an equal protection argument. But the road does not move both ways. So if the municipality has a lesser penalty than what the state prescribes, somehow that's okay under home rule. Is that your analysis as well?
Well, I didn't know that there were additional submissions to this item until right now, so I haven't seen any of this. That doesn't make sense to me, though. It seems that it should go both ways. But you have often questioned attempted inroads and in home rule authority, and that certainly raises questions about that the state law is fine, but the city's law isn't, even when it's a lesser offense. But again, I just saw this, so just hearing you tell me about it is the first I've heard of it.
That was the way I read it. I'm not sure that I'm reading it correct, but I think based on what I saw in the briefs, that was one of the arguments being made.
And actually, I probably should have introduced our Judge Jefferson. Sorry about that. Didn't see you walk in there, so apologies for that. I know, Judge Jefferson, we did ask you to come to this meeting a couple weeks back, and thank you for being here, but is there anything that you want to add on this item? Especially regarding the fact that there is a submission within the packet itself. So, good evening, Your Honor.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. I appreciate your invitation to be heard this evening. If the council would allow, I would like to take a brief moment to provide maybe about a 5-minute overview on some of the information that's been provided, as well as a brief reminder of some of the activities of our court.
Your Honor, before you move forward, I was going to ask to table this item until the 21st of October. I'm not sure if you're available on that date, 2 weeks from today.
I believe so.
I know we don't have a full council tonight, so I was hoping to have a full council for this. So
Understandable.
I'm not sure if members of council feel the same way in terms of tabling until the 21st. I just don't know. I feel like I've already wasted your time, but I would like to table this item until October 21st, since it does seem to work with your schedule.
I think that should be fine.
Could I get a second? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I would like to table it as well, partly because I'm having second thoughts, but I would kind of like to hear from the judge, even if we hear again on the 21st, just because I want to go home and chew on this a little bit, and would appreciate having some more input.
Yeah, if you want to go, that's fine with me. If you want to go ahead and, is that, okay.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you offering that opportunity, and perhaps I won't have to repeat myself on the 17th. I'll try my best not to do that. I've been accused of being long-winded as a local politician and as the judge, so I'm going to try to keep it really brief. But my hope is that some of this makes sense and could perhaps add for additional conversation on the 17th. But I just wanted to, really try to narrow my conversation and statements to the council and to the public regarding impacts to our court and to the criminal justice system. Obviously, there's a larger public policy issue for the council to address on behalf of the residents of the community, and I just want to reiterate that our court does not oppose the ultimate policy question being answered by this council about what the community's decision or desires on the maximum possible punishment for any given offense is, and that we do still have substantial impacts on how this is being proposed. We also reiterate that, perhaps creating a few broad categories of municipal offenses that could clarify the maximum punishments for each category inside of our local code may be a more efficient and understandable way for all stakeholders to understand criminal justice here in Englewood, including the general public as well as pro se defendants who are essentially representing themselves in a criminal proceeding. We'd like to highlight that some lower and exclusively local charges like open liquor in public will still be subject to the maximum possible punishments authorized by our ordinance if this was passed. Our remaining concern after looking into this is really implementation surrounding traffic and fines and the requirement that we have some support from our IT department as well as our outside vendor in order to be able to make our portal functionable, which actually allows people to pay those traffic matters without seeing the judge, right? And just do that online, as well as through our violations bureau at our front counter of our court during normal office hours. I want to, let you know, kind of why I included some of these attachments that I think included unanswered council questions. I know that the council has spent substantial amounts of time discussing these issues, but it seemed that there were still unanswered questions, particularly in relation to Councilmember Russell's council request, and that's why I included the CML newsletter to provide a little information about what happened in Rifle. I actually provided a copy of their local ordinance to reiterate that they did more than simply add a singular line that said defer to the state. I also included a Denver Post article that hopefully gives a little bit of background about what's happening statewide on these issues. I also included just the Longmont brief, and I appreciate Councilmember Ward saying that he was looking into what the other side of that argument is, but in my mind I was just really attempting to answer Councilmember Russell's question, which was really what are the cities arguing, and providing those couple of cases that they're citing to, including the Wade and Martin cases. Finally, I want to provide, I'll reiterate, I guess, with that jail and fine, that we've talked about a lot and that this ordinance proposal covers a lot of ground. Most of what's being argued and what I provided in this packet regards the maximum taking of liberty, putting someone in jail. But this ordinance would impact a lot more than that, right? And include fines. And of course, the council is on the goal line of adopting a new model traffic code. And of course, the model traffic code is contemplated and put out, contemplates that each municipality will adopt the model traffic code and select their own penalties on that. And in fact, the model traffic code, as you put it out there, or as put out there by the state, contemplates exactly that. And those are the instructions to each municipality as it's put out there. I want to reiterate that the concern regarding fines is somewhat alleviated in our court's ability to simply waive fines or provide a community service option after any finding of indigency in our court. I'll also reiterate and agree with the city attorney's position that this would not have a substantial jail impact given how we've sort of evolved on these issues perhaps over the last year. But the memo also contains the idea of some delayed implementation or in something that kind of dawned on me a little bit after the fact of realizing that these arguments are so focused on jail, perhaps the city could take a two-bite approach to this and simply address the jail issues first and then spend more time on the fine and cost issues. I'll reiterate that there may be unintended consequences to unique local issues. I saw that the city is considering regulations on natural medicines that may be substantially limited by state statute as far as what are the punishments for public consumption or possession by those under the age of 21. I will also reiterate, I know that the city's sort of on the goal line of considering some auto forfeiture actions that may not be contemplated by state statute for speed racing convictions. I will, disagree with the city attorney publicly that we have substantial liability stemming from our court. And I'll reiterate that, there's been no ruling by any judge that I'm aware of that says that it's unconstitutional for a local penalty to go above and beyond the state statute equivalent. Obviously, we may receive some guidance from the Supreme Court on these issues in the near future. And I'll just reiterate that our court always strives for the ideals of justice, including following the law, and will continue to do so if and when the law changes by this council or by a higher court. I also want to remind folks of the benefits of having a municipal court more broadly, and that includes our ability to serve our community in ways that our state colleagues cannot. Our speedy trial timeline is half that of the state. We offer substantial convenience to all the parties, including victims of crime here in our community. We have deep understanding of our local issues and the impacts cases have on people, including local problem solving that was highlighted a little bit today with the Restorative Justice Program. I also want to reiterate that most of our cases do not include jail at all, and that our court is mostly focused on rehabilitation and restoration of our cases on a case-by-case basis, and that's what I enjoy most about doing this role for our community. We do hold offenders accountable when justice requires. Jail can sometimes be an appropriate sanction, particularly for those that involve legitimate issues of public safety or egregious offenders. But any time that is done, it's done with a full consideration of all of the factors outlined in Colorado law, including the impacts to our community, criminal history, as well as the law itself. We have substantial oversight, despite us having a locally independent court. We are overseen by elected officials, including myself, as well as this body on some level regarding budgeting, that are uniquely accessible and accountable to their decisions, unlike our state and federal counterparts. We are bound by city councils and their ordinances that they pass here locally. We are regulated by the State Office of Attorney Regulation Council. I also want to remind everybody that just like the state court, every party in our cases have the right to appeal any decision that the court makes. And that's a criminal defendant as well as the city itself, if the city feels that there's something inappropriate happening. Further, I want to reiterate that our court has the same right to a public defender that our state colleagues have, and that we provide substantial amounts of court-appointed counsel in our system, and therefore our cases are reviewed not only by public, but also private attorneys. Our court decisions have been appealed somewhere in the neighborhood of around a dozen times since I've been the presiding judge here in Englewood over the last about 7 years. Only about a handful of those, perhaps 5, have reached a written decision by our appellate court, and the court's decisions have always been upheld during my term of office. We are open and transparent and open to the public, and we invite any of you to come visit us to learn more about how we serve our community. I want to reiterate that when there's an outlier by our court or any other municipal court in this state, they're subject to review in the same way as any other governmental or judicial action. Finally, I want to reiterate that we're not on an island here in Englewood, and that I'm also the elected president of our Colorado Municipal Judges Association. And that ensures that we're not only in tune with compliance with laws, but we're also in tune with best practices in this state. I want to reiterate that we have a court that I am personally very proud of, and that I think that you all can be very proud of upon learning more. I also finally want to reiterate that as a judge anywhere, you proudly serve the community. But in Englewood, we have a local residency requirement, and every judge is not only a practicing attorney, but also a resident of Englewood. And so that means that for our judges, serving the community means serving their own community. And for any judge, there truly is no higher honor. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be heard tonight. I'm happy to answer questions, but I'll come back on the 17th for further questions, and perhaps I can skip this spiel that night. Thank you again for listening.
Your Honor, thank you very much for coming tonight, and thank you very much for that overview. Any questions? Member Russell, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for these answers to the questions also. I do have a question. You talked about the traffic software being updated to handle that. If council was going to move forward with this, how long would you need to update the traffic software? When do you think that could be completed by?
Well, our court administrator and I have been thinking about that substantially, particularly as we kind of prepared for first reading on this. We do have some concern about, ability to comply, but we would be extremely diligent to do so within the 30-day period, and that's what this second reading contemplates tonight. And so, in our memorandum, we are reiterating that we are capable of implementing anything the council wishes to proceed with in a 30-day period. However, I'll just reiterate that it does require support from our IT department as well as our outside vendor, and that has been problematic in the past.
Okay, thank you.
You may, please. Do you mind? Come on. You got to come to the.
Do you mind coming to the mic and introducing yourself as well?
Anita Julian, Court Administrator. I just want clarification on that. Yes, we can implement in 30 days. It may not be through our case management system, so we would be doing double work in order to have that. As Judge said, we need IT and our vendor to help do some of those amendments. So if you were to implement this, we probably would ask for some more time, but we do understand that it usually is within the 30-day period, and we would do our best to comply, but there are some programming issues that we would have to handle as well.
And there may need to be some workarounds or temporary solutions found, and that's why I feel relatively confident just thinking through what those workarounds could look like with additional help from our staff. And, if we need to have somebody standing up front, waiting for somebody to walk up to the Violations Bureau so we can make sure we get it right, that's what we're going to do.
Thanks, Ms. Julian. Go ahead.
Can I ask one more question? So the Longmont case that you included in here, is that an appeal to a higher court?
Yes, that's in front of the district court and the 20th Judicial at this time. I'm not aware of any decision timeline on that, but I anticipate that happening relatively quickly. But I think there's also some potential that the Supreme Court, or that may flow through further higher appellate levels through our appellate court and ultimately our Supreme Court of the state of Colorado.
Okay, thank you. That's it for now.
Member Wright.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge, and Ms. Julian for being here. We have been told that the fine schedule could probably be on a cheat sheet. I want to confirm that that would be the case because you're talking about traffic and that type of stuff. I would like to know if, in fact, if we follow all of state, if in fact for all the fines and possible jail penalties, if these would be on a cheat sheet, since you're the experts on what someone may be fined or end up in jail, you have the, I've read it, max dollar amount, max jail amount, I guess, where you have currently, would it fit on a cheat sheet for everybody?
I think the answer generally is no, but, you know, certainly, and that's what I think the difficulty of having, you know, broader conversations regarding issues regarding jail and fines come into play. Certainly, the jail issues are not overly complicated and could perhaps fit on a single page. The issues of all of the different traffic ordinances and mirroring the penalties of the state, I don't believe could be accomplished on a single page. And in fact, I think what is proposed by the city attorney's office in looking at some of the state guidance was somewhere in the neighborhood of about 50 pages. I could be wrong, 48? Well, more than a page, I guess I'll just say.
Okay.
And,
Okay, and then something that I appreciate and I thank you for getting to us is the rifle. I was under the impression when we had first reading is rifle did everything under the state. And then reading this, it's criminal mischief and theft. Correct me if I'm wrong, and either city attorney or you, Judge. If I read this correctly, rifle only did two separate charges that they are following the state guidelines now, not all charges under the state. Did I read that correctly?
you know, I think what you have in that packet includes a council bill that was passed in rifle that, you know, took kind of a twofold approach, right? One was some sort of singular sentence there, and I'll defer to the city attorney if she would like to answer further, but, you know, similar to what's being contemplated tonight, but also rewrote their theft and criminal mischief ordinances with specific ranges for the dollar amounts in question, as well as provided maximum jail sentences for each level of offense in rifle.
Okay.
And city attorney, feel free to jump in. I apologize.
Okay, and then,
If I could just weigh
Oh,
in.
yes.
And I agree completely. We mirrored our proposed language on our general penalty on this ordinance because it states, however, the penalty for any offense intended to address similar conduct in CRS, which would be state law that's prosecuted in district court, shall be the penalty for any violation of this municipal code. So it did apply to every offense, but then, as Judge pointed out, they did completely rewrite their sections for theft and criminal mischief specifically. And we didn't propose that.
okay, I'm looking at their, all right, I'll have to relook at it again. So all of their municipal crimes are under state, or they?
Yes, so I'm looking at specifically page 2 of 4 of the City of Rifle Ordinance, their revision to section 1-4-20, general penalty, and the language under the general penalty, and then the language under 10-1-40 penalties. It's stating that the penalty for any offense under state law shall be the penalty for any violation of municipal code.
Okay.
And we reworded it because I didn't think that was terribly clear the way they reworded it, but we reworded it to mean the same thing.
Okay, I see it now. Okay, and then,
And real quick, I guess I'll just jump in there and just say that, you know, but rifle contemplates exactly what the court is recommending of different categories of municipal offenses, and you can see the sentencing ranges for each of those in the rifle ordinance.
okay. And then what has higher standing, the state law or, in all these articles, it references the state constitution, Article 20, Section 6, and they talk about home rule authority. And a lot of these cases say that the home rule authority, because of that Article 20, Section 6 in the Constitution, we are allowed to govern ourselves, from my understanding. Not a lawyer or, you know, a scholar in that, but that's what I got from that.
Yes, and I think, you know, what's at issue in these cases is whether or not there's a limitation to that, given the state's reform, you know, that implemented, I want to say, a couple of years ago. And, you know, to their point, again, the gap is bigger than it's ever been between sentencing on state and municipal.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Member Ward.
So you attached Longmont's brief to our packet. Did you read the other side's brief as well? Because as I look through both of them, Longmont is clearly making a home rule argument. But the appellant's opening brief cites to a case People v. Lee, which was a 2020 case. And it's in that case, the court notes, we've long held, in contrast with the above noted federal precedent, that Colorado's guarantee of equal protection is violated where two criminal statutes prescribe identical conduct, yet one punishes that conduct more harshly. And I think that's the matter at hand here. Is the question of whether we are violating a fundamental principle and a fundamental right under Colorado law to equal protection by allowing different penalties, or even in some cases potentially harsher penalties, to be meted out in municipal court compared to state court. And that's what I'll be chewing on, because I'm sensitive to home rule, but I'm far more sensitive to individual rights than I am to home rule. And so I don't want anything I do on this dais to be violative of individual rights, particularly when they concern conduct for which someone can lose their freedom, criminal conduct to which you could be sentenced to jail time. So that's just an FYI for both you and the city attorney. That's what I'm struggling with at this point. The most recent precedent I see here is this 2020 People v. Lee, which is fairly recent. And so I'll be looking to see further down the road if there is additional content, but it looks like the appeals court at least has been fairly clear on this subject previously.
But I think the issues you're raising are competing with the issues that Member Wright's raising of, home rule authority under state constitution, section 20. And I think that's the exact subject matter of these ongoing litigations. And again, perhaps we'll get some guidance in the near future on these issues that we're all sort of waiting for. And I think the council has the sort of difficult task of creating policy outside of the court of law, which will make those determinations. And this body has a little bit different, decision to make, which is really a policy decision on the best interest of the community, which could happen before, after, or concurrent, as you guys are all well aware. And so I'll leave that to your guys' wisdom on how to proceed in the best interest of the community.
Member Prang.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight and making time for us. And please excuse any ignorance that I might display in asking questions, but I'm trying to get up to speed on understanding all of this. So one, I want to understand, I appreciate you asking to take the time to give your perspective this evening. And so I'm hearing hesitation kind of all the way around, with also, we'll do whatever the decision is made here. Did I hear, or could you clarify, are you, in your kind of two-tiered approach that you recommended, would you be recommending us to look at the jail time piece first and then be given a little bit more time to come up with those solutions for barriers that you perceive for the fees piece of it?
I don't know if I have any recommendation, candidly. I think that's an alternative and food for thought for the council. I don't know that I have a strong position on this. I think that good judge remain silent on public policy issues that are clearly up to a different branch of government, and that is you folks sitting up here, right? You guys have been elected to make these decisions on behalf of the community. I've been elected to make decisions in another room across the hall, and so I try to kind of honor that. I'm just giving, food for thought on impacts to the court and to the criminal justice system, and I don't know that I have a specific recommendation, and candidly, I'm not sure that it's appropriate for me to have a specific recommendation, but as I see you guys talking through these things, I'm just offering these as potential alternatives or food for thought, and ultimately what you guys think is in the best interest of the community is how we'll proceed.
Okay, I appreciate that.
And I apologize,
Although
I do appreciate
recommendations.
I really am not trying to be dodgy. I really normally am extremely opinionated, so it's kind of funny for me.
I did have a second question. So we've had a lot of conversation, as I'm sure you're aware, and You know, we kind of keep bouncing back and forth between kind of the home rule issue and this being a policy decision. And I'm trying to stay focused on the policy piece of it. And I have similar sentiments to what Member Ward has expressed so far about, you know, erring on the side of wanting to make sure that whatever our decision is ultimately protecting civil rights and individual rights. But I also appreciate the fact that we get to make our own decisions and what's best for our community. Are there any examples that you could think of? So were someone to be really like digging into the home rule piece of it, are there any examples of current penalties that you're aware of, that we have, that have been implemented by our courts that are in excess of a state penalty that we would have justification for? Like, are there any, and you don't have to answer this off the top of your head tonight, but, you know, were you to come back and have further conversation with us, I'm just curious, are there offenses specific to Englewood that have been problematic for us that we may want to make a justification of having a higher penalty versus the state, and could we justify that? I'm really curious about that piece of things to kind of get over that hump of having to weigh, you know, the issue on the home rule issue versus us making a policy decision.
The biggest one that I see, and, you know, I see folks discussing, is retail theft, candidly. Auto vehicle theft as well, to a lesser degree, because I'm only aware of, you know, one or few municipalities who handle auto theft on the municipal level. But retail theft has been the really big talking point, particularly on retail thefts under $300. And the income and the impacts to communities, and that's where I see some municipalities taking different tacks, so to speak.
Okay, thank you for that example. I appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Any further questions from members of council? Go ahead, Member Russell.
Can I just ask one other question?
Sure.
I think I saw in the packet of information, something about assault. Assault is perhaps would get a lower penalty than some other, whereas, could you just speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, you know, remember that the general penalty provision will still stand, as the city attorney mentioned earlier, and that would essentially be the maximum possible punishment for any offense in which there is no state equivalent, right? And so obviously all of the substantial criminal offenses you can think of are also covered in state statute. And so you'd be left with licensing issues, code issues. The example I used in my memo was open liquor in public. For having an open container, you'd be subject to up to 360 days in jail, $2,650 in fines, and meanwhile, you know, assault essentially will be subject to 360, but will only be subject to a $1,000 fine. Maybe a better example is something like an M2, like a harassment conviction, which would only be subject to 120 days in jail versus 360 for having an open liquor in public charge. And so I'm just reminding the council, I guess, of the policy that they'll be adopting by approving this ordinance and the potential concerns or, you know, inconsistencies with that adoption, if that makes sense. And so, you know, essentially our court has taken the maximum, well, our city, I guess I should say, has taken the maximum authority granted to us under the Home Rule Authority and essentially provided that to our court and to our judge for some substantial period. We've had private conversations and with a couple of you on this dais about the appropriateness of the general penalty provision on lesser offenses. And I'm just highlighting that maybe as you're thinking about punishments for offenses here in Englewood, that maybe that's something that also should be discussed of what is the appropriate punishment for offenses in which there is no state equivalent, because most of those are, you know, below and what would be considered a state level misdemeanor. And I think there could be some arguments regarding disparate impact on those types of issues, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions from members of council? All right, seeing none. Judge Jefferson, thank you very much for coming tonight. I'm going to ask members of council if we are able to make a motion to table until October 21st. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments from members of council? Go ahead, Member Russell.
I just want to thank Judge Jefferson and Court Administrator Julian for coming and sharing with us and just for answering a lot of the questions that I had. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, with that, can we please vote on tabling to the 21st?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Yes, Miss Julian, thank you very much for coming tonight, and Your Honor, it's good to see you again. Have a good evening. All right, moving on to CB 23, creation of a hookah business license. We have City Attorney Tamara Niles. This is second reading, so anything to add?
I don't have anything new, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from members of council? I too will be asking if we could table this item until the 21st. Could I get a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can. Go ahead.
Before we
Member Russell.
vote. So my question, where in the ordinance does this delineate safety regulations to be implemented? I mean, most of it was general, I think. And since we're probably going to table it, I don't have to have the answer right now.
I will go ahead and answer. There is a provision regarding, of course, the mouthpiece. Let's see. And that is a new section 5-33-1B4, which is to, in order to limit the spread of communicable disease, every person shall use their own sterile mouthpiece. Other safety regulations are the hours of operation, potentially locations, the 1,000-foot buffer, like the other potential regulation we discussed today. And so those are really the safety components. It also requires a license that then would generally trigger a safety inspection by our fire marshal.
So most of those that you mentioned are under B, conditions and restrictions of the license. So, okay, it makes more sense when I was reading it. I thought, well, we have to have a license. But, all right, thank you, I appreciate that.
Any further questions? We got a first and a second on tabling until the 21st. I think I stated that. All right, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you very much, members of council. Moving on to 11C1, this is resolution setting 2025 City Council holiday and meeting schedule. We have City Attorney Tamara Niles.
Thank you, Mayor. City Charter requires City Council to meet 2 times per month. And according to Municipal Code, City Council sets its holidays. When a regular meeting falls on a Monday, City Council meets on a Tuesday instead. City Council, of course, generally holds 2 meetings per month for business and then 2 study sessions. However, study sessions are generally canceled if we don't have any items scheduled. So next Monday, for example, we don't have any study session items canceled, so there won't, or study session items scheduled, so there won't be one. Historically, City Council has set a holiday schedule for both a summer holiday and a winter holiday break. We did discuss that City Council would like to adopt all of the 2025 holidays this year, and so we have proposed the following 2025 holidays in this resolution. President's Day, which is no longer recognized citywide, we have proposed to provide it for a City Council recognized holiday after some discussions that we had. Of course, it's the 3rd Monday in February. So we would propose a holiday schedule that's a little bit different than the prior years for 2025. Memorial Day is May 26th, and we propose that it not be rescheduled. Generally, we don't have any time-sensitive issues this time of year. Then for summer break, we would propose no meetings June 9th or June 16th, which means City Council would hold meetings on June 2nd and June 23rd. In the prior years, we have tried to schedule the holiday summer break rather during July. However, this has been an obstacle for staff that's been difficult to overcome because in July we study and discuss ballot questions for the November ballot, and we generally start working on budget issues as well. So that's why as staff we discussed it at the leadership team, and it is our recommendation that we do it in the middle of June instead of the beginning of July. There also is another issue. Of course, ordinance requires us to have first and second readings, charter requires us to have first and second readings on ordinances at least 7 days apart. By setting the holiday schedule in the middle of June, we will have the 2 weeks in between meetings because June is also a 5-Monday month. So that's another obstacle that we've had to deal with when we take 2 weeks off. Then for winter break, we would propose no meetings December 22nd or December 29th, which means there would be city action meetings December 1st and December 15th.
Thank you very much, City Attorney Niles. Any questions for members of council? Go ahead, Member Russell.
I'm really wondering why we need a summer break at all. I was really frustrated last year by how much catch-up we had to do because of the breaks in July. I mean, staff is welcome to take time off. City council can take time off, but I don't really see the need to do that. Especially, I mean, I'm okay with the December ones, the winter breaks, but in the summer, I think staff could take time off and council doesn't have to.
Thank you, Member Russell. You met last year, 2023, not this current year, correct?
Actually, didn't we have to spend a lot of time catching up this year?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was 2024.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Member Wright.
Thank you. And to piggyback, Member Russell, in July, even after we took our 2 weeks off, we still had issues of almost not having a quorum once because after the 2 week break, because there were council members with planned time off. So I don't know if we just need to coordinate our vacations and then just take our vacations when we're gonna take them. I understand that staff might need a break from us for a couple weeks, but it just, I don't know if we need those breaks. They do we ended up having to smash a lot of work in all at once when we came back. So I think that's something we need to consider. And do we really plan our vacations around those 2 weeks off in the summer?
Thank you, Member Wright. Anyone else? Go ahead, Member Russell.
I would just like to say probably, I've been on council, it'll be 9 years next month. Until the last 2 years, we never got a summer break. I mean, people could take time off and they did if they were going on vacation with their children, but city staff can take time off regardless of our schedule. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. I'll just ask a different question, just going back to the holidays proposed. It looks like we, in terms of what drew this conversation in the first place, it looks like we're covering all the major holidays. And so I don't see any issues with those. I'm trying to see if we missed anything at all, but those are all the major holidays, correct? City Attorney Niles?
I believe so, yes. And this aligns with the city employee holiday schedule as well, except for President's Day, which we added it back in
Right.
for council to recognize, which that means the third, instead of meeting the third Monday in February, we would meet on the Tuesday after.
Okay, so they'll be here on Monday regardless, but we would meet on Tuesday. So, okay.
Yes.
All right, and then I guess in terms of the summer break, I know that we're never going to have a good summer break schedule to meet the needs of all of staff and council. I think part of the reason why we've done this in the past is that yes, we bring a lot of things forward. We still have the 2 meetings a month that are required by charter, so that's still a thing. And then we wouldn't, many councils take time off during the summer as well for these type of things, and so. I like the summer break. Even the June, I think is going to be difficult because we normally take vacations in July. So I can see that being an issue. I'm fine having it on the calendar and setting the study session or setting the holiday schedule in June, and then obviously try to work that with it, with my family. So, but I like the idea of still having summer break in order to give council as well as staff a little break within the summer. So. While still meeting the requirements of charter. Any other comments or any other questions from members of council? Actually, I just realized I made a comment without making a motion, but I guess we already fixed that last week. But anything else?
We haven't voted on the second reading of the new
No.
Bob's rules, so.
I thought we did. Yeah.
I believe it
We
was on.
30 days have not elapsed yet.
It was on tonight's
that's
consent
right.
agenda,
That's what it
I
is.
think.
Okay.
Yes, but 30 days after publication before it goes into effect.
Man. All right. Well, apologies, everyone. All right. Well, can I get a motion to approve 11C1?
I move to approve 11C1.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Any further comments? All right. Seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Prang,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you so much, City Attorney Niles. We're moving on to 11C2. This is the EDDA 2025 budget. We have Executive Director Hillary Portel online. If we have any questions from members of council, or Ms. Portel, do you have any comments to make before we get into questions?
I do not. I'm
you're
just
online.
here to answer any questions tonight.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Executive Director. Any questions from members of council? Go ahead, Member Russell.
I just have one. Has all the money the city loaned to the DDA been paid back?
Yes, we paid that off at the end of last year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11C2?
Move to approve 11C2.
Thank you, Member Prang. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments? All right, seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Prang,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Ms. Portel, thank you very much for staying online so late in the evening. Thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you.
All right, members of council, we're moving on to Mayor's Choice. So I did have a question on here, and as I stated earlier, this was not a discussion about ranked choice voting, but in order to provide direction to city clerk and the city attorney, we tabled this item to bring back to a study session, but we want to provide a little bit more clarity to the city clerk in terms of what information you required in order to be more informed on ranked choice voting. And what you would like to see as part of a study session. So we wanted to just give direction to city clerk on that item. So if anybody wants to add anything, at least from my perspective, I'd like to understand the costs from the Arapahoe County, the partnership, like the technology that we would need. I know when we discussed this back in July or August, those were like unknown questions about what exactly that process is going to look like, what the level of effort is going to be from the city clerk's office. So just more about what the change in the process is going to do to the workload for the city clerk, and then how we're going to coordinate with the Arapahoe County. That's basically where I'm coming from in terms of what I would need in order to be more informed on the subject. Member Prang, and then we'll go down the road. Member Prang, Member Wright, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would like clarity on the cost piece, both from the county level cost as well as distinctly the city's cost and any changes that need to be made. I also would like to know how many cities have adopted ranked choice voting and then moved back away from it. You did bring us some information last time on that. I'd like to know how many cities did that and if we could get some examples of why. And then also, I would like to know what the typical public education campaign timeline would be for such a change. That's all I have.
I'm noodling on that last one. Member Wright, go ahead.
Thank you. Some of the questions I would have are some of the things that I wrote down that Ms. Whitebert brought up, and unfortunately, I'm not. Yeah. So there's got to be somewhere we could find out the number of ballots that are tossed, and then how they have to verify, how that's done. I believe Member Prang said, the cost of training. And then it would be per election cycle, I would think, because just like you have election judges and stuff like that, you would have to train every cycle because you have volunteers every time, I would think. So I would like to know that entire process and the cost. And then maybe we could go back and watch everything that she said that we would need to take into consideration. And she brought up a lot of good points. Dictation, I just didn't take it in school. I think she brought up a lot of great questions. I just couldn't keep up with what she was saying. So, but those points that I did get, I definitely would like to see.
Thank you, Member Wright. Mayor Pro Tem.
I would like to mostly hear our options around adoption, whether that be adopting it as an ordinance, doing a special election, and what each of those would entail.
And Member Ward.
So while I don't disagree with obtaining some data about spoiled ballots or ballots that can't be counted, I think it's important to put that information in context. So if we are getting that data, we also need to consider what that number is under the current system. That would include undervotes and overvotes on any current ballot, because there might be a reason why someone doesn't vote a contest in a ranked choice vote, or why that contest doesn't get counted. If they choose not to mark it, we want to make sure that we're not considering that to be a spoiled ballot. It's just an undervote that the voter chose purposely to undervote. My suggestion would be that we invite someone from the Secretary of State's office. I worked in the State Elections Division for many years. They're responsible for statewide implementation of voting systems. I think someone potentially in the voting systems area, but if we can put in a call to the State Elections Division. I do have contacts there if we don't have luck. Some people there still know me, and some of them actually still like me. So I think we might be able to get somebody there to speak with some level of expertise. I'm just not confident that Arapahoe County officials are going to have the required expertise. The other suggestion I would have is actually to bring in someone. Arapahoe County uses Dominion voting systems. Someone from the voting system vendor would be able to describe and discuss the technical aspects of a ranked choice voting system, because that Dominion voting system is able to actually conduct ranked choice votes. But if we have nuts and bolts related questions or experience related questions in other jurisdictions, even jurisdictions out of our state, that level of expertise would be helpful to us.
Thank you, Member Ward. So based on your recommendations, it sounds like this would be over multiple meetings. It wouldn't just be one. If we're going to have a state official, state election official, someone from Dominion, I still think Arapahoe County needs to be involved since they're involved in the process, and just some of the questions that we had about what we would like to see as well. Am I understanding that correctly? wouldn't be just one meeting.
I think we could potentially do it in a single session, and I wasn't suggesting that we exclude Arapahoe County, only that we be aware of their limitations,
Right.
having not implemented this. Their estimation of what it may take to implement and operate it is not necessarily going to be the most accurate in the world.
Fair point.
If,
Member Wright, go ahead.
thank you. If we're going to be bringing people in, I would like to bring in a city that has, actually two maybe, city that has implemented it and like to hear how they've done. And then if we're going to do that, bring in also a city that has implemented it and has decided to get rid of it and hear from them why they decided it didn't work for that city. I would like to hear, the balance and input from both.
Thank you, Member Wright. I'm sure we could ask the question whether or not they decide to come. I'm not sure how. We can ask the question. I'd be happy to ask that question, or City Clerk, but.
Mayor?
Go ahead, Member Ward.
I'd suggest we request written feedback from those peers as opposed to actually asking them to come to the study
I
session.
would think
There
it'd be
aren't
very
that many
difficult for them,
questions
yeah.
that they'll be able to answer for us.
Yeah. That was my thought in terms of getting them to be present, so. Okay.
You're saying to ask for a written statement from them on that?
Yeah, just something informal, an email or something saying, hey, we're looking at this. Can you tell us what your experience was? And
Anything else that, from members of council in terms of what the expectation is for ranked choice voting? I can't say it. Ranked choice, still can't say it. Nope. Does that give you enough, City Clerk?
What type of timeline did you want this to come forward?
It's a lot of information that we'd be seeking. There is a state election coming up, so I wouldn't expect to have this until after the new year, to be honest with you. So,
thank you.
Member Prang?
I just thought of one other additional piece of information. When we ask about the typical timeline for public education, can you associate a cost with that as well? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Member Prang. Two more things for me in terms of mayor's choice. Just wanted to let everybody know that I will be in attendance for the walk and roll school day this Wednesday. I'll be meeting folks at Maddox at 7:20, but we're just going to be riding our bikes to Clayton. But very happy that the city and Public Works, Police Department, all involved with this. Thank you to members of the school system, especially Clayton, as well as our superintendent that has gotten very involved in this as well. So very, very thankful for everyone on this. And then lastly, just wanted to, since you guys heard earlier, there is no agenda items for next Monday, so we won't have a meeting until the 21st. So anyone else for council member's choice? Go ahead, Member Ward.
I have two items I'd like to bring forward for council. The first is that I read the memo from community development in response to the contractor license inquiry that we had. And I just don't feel like it answered the fundamental question, which is why do we require contractors to be licensed? And I think this is a policy decision that council has the option of making, to the extent that we've overlooked the fact that this is a requirement in our code. I think we should examine it, and if it is being enforced and it doesn't exist in code, then we need to examine that as well. But I think we need to schedule a study session for contractor licensing discussion, particularly as it relates to owner-builder projects. So that's one request I have of the body. I don't know if you want to take a poll, Mayor.
Yeah, let me take a poll now, Member Ward. So this is GC requirements for any builder. Was it specific? I know the question came up specifically around EDUs, but is this for, what's the scope of this?
As I understand it, our code requires any homeowner engaging in a residential project to obtain a general contractor. That may be scope dependent. It may be additions or remodels or something, but there's, those are the blanks that we can fill in.
Yeah.
We also need to have a discussion on how we would modify the code if we choose to allow owner-builder projects.
Perfect. I would be in support of that, Member Ward. Mayor Pro Tem?
Support as well.
Okay. Yes? Okay, so support to bring a study session item on that. And you had a second item, Member Ward?
Second item, we received an email, I believe it was yesterday or today, regarding car noise over the weekend or traffic noise over the weekend. Sounds like street racers, and the resident who reported this to us indicated that she called PD and they said it's just a car club meeting. So I think we need to have, as I looked through the city code, I didn't find a lot of exacting prescription on how we handle noise issues in the city. There are a couple of noise ordinances, a couple of provisions in the code that address noise somewhat vaguely. And one of them specifically excludes traffic traveling through the public right-of-way. So I think there is room for a more robust policy discussion on the subject of nuisance car noise and how we want to handle that as a body if we need to look at changing noise. I'm a big, huge, as many of you know, advocate of quiet hours. I think people are entitled to their peace and quiet from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. every day, and to the extent that PD may need some additional tools to enforce that, I am ready and willing to have that discussion.
Thank you, Member Ward. I would be in favor of that as well. Study session, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone in disagreement on that?
Totally agree.
Actually, just real quick, City Attorney Niles, that is not going to be forthcoming to us. We're not just doubling up here on something that's going to be coming in front of us in a matter of weeks, correct?
Likely not a matter of weeks, no.
Okay, cool. All right. All right, anything else, Member Ward?
Yeah, just one more item. Tomorrow, I will be attending roll call for all 3 shifts, along with a scheduled ride-along. I like to do a ride-along once a year and roll call twice a year. If anybody is interested in joining me for what I believe will be my next roll call on Christmas, it's an annual tradition since I got appointed to council. I like to show up on Christmas Day to greet our police officers who are protecting the city, when most of them would probably rather be with their families. Let me know, and I'll get you in there.
Thank you very much, Member Ward. Do you know someone to get us in?
Yeah, I know a guy.
You know a guy? All right. Thank you, Member Ward. Member Wright.
Thank you. To piggyback on what Member Ward was saying on that noise ordinance, I would like a council request. This email was stating that the officers knew about what was going on. I need, if we could do a request, I think these car events end earlier than 11 p.m. So, City Manager, did you receive the email also?
Yes, it was forwarded to me, and Member Russell has entered a council request on that, and so that's been entered, and also I just forwarded it to the city attorney, so she's aware of it also. But
Okay,
police will be getting all the details about that for council.
Okay, because I just wanted, you and I have had those conversations, but we've been told but want to confirm, so, okay, perfect. The other is, I said, when Mr. Crabtree came and spoke, asking about the council doing a resolution in support of the ballot measure, what was it? I believe he said it was 301 for a elected mayor. I said that I would bring it up during member's choice. So I don't know if it's something that this council would be interested in. I believe I heard them speaking out of 25 big cities, 23 have elected mayors. I believe Grand Junction is the other one. So I wanted to see if this council would be in favor of some type of a resolution for an elected mayor.
Thank you. Go ahead, Member Russell.
Actually, could I just make a motion to have a resolution in support of ballot initiative 301 for an elected mayor?
Okay, and I'll second that.
Thank you, Member Russell and Member Wright. Any comments from members of council? Go ahead, Member Ward.
I think I've been fairly consistent on this, but I am loath to use the authority of this body to advocate for or against anything or to push a political position that our electors are preparing to vote on. So I'm gonna be a no on this, just because I think it's up to any given entity, whether it's the city or community members who put something on the ballot to advocate for or against that item.
Thank you, Member Ward. Any further comments? I too will be voting against the resolution. And I'll just leave it at that for tonight, so. And City Clerk, can you please take the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Nay.
Member Prang,
Nay.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Nay.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Nay.
Let the record show 2 ayes and 4 nays.
Thank you. Anything else, Member Wright? Nope.
No, thank you.
Member Russell?
Yes, thank you. I think I had two, but I don't remember what the other one was. I actually would like to have a policy decision really on the process for the city council article in the city magazine. We get to write an article for the magazine. I believe it's probably every 5th quarter, it's just longer than a year. When we first started, we got 400 words. Then it went down to 350, then to 300, and now it's at 275. And I find it really egregious that this council approves thousands of dollars for a magazine that we can't have at least 400 words every 5th quarter, just over a year and a quarter. So I would like a decision. I mean, staff is writing stuff in that magazine every quarter. It just frustrates me that the citizens elect us to a position and we aren't given a venue where we can address their concerns. So I would like council to weigh in on that.
Thank you, thank you very much, Member Russell. Anyone? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'd like to see it increase to 400. I think that's a great idea.
Member Wright?
I agree.
Okay. Let's see, got agreement on that. Member Russell, we got nodding heads on that. I didn't realize it went down to 250, so thanks for bringing that to 275. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. All right, anything else for members of council? All right, moving on to city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 updates for you tonight. One is the promised update on the parks bond sign issue that were wrongly purchased by staff. And the second is approval of the letter that's in your packet. This was noticed on the agenda, just seeking approval to participate with the county as part of the hazard mitigation plan. So I have some points on that in just a moment. As of Thursday, we had about 110 signs that have been turned in per our request of the citizens group. I did reach out to the leaders of the citizen group today and express my concern that those are not coming in faster, and that is creating, further tension. A member of the committee reported that on Friday they brought in an additional 40 signs. So I've asked park staff to check with the hub because I think that that's where those were turned in. If that is correct, then we do have over half of those back right now. As I said on September 23rd, it's my responsibility to ensure that staff knows the actions that can and should be taken to ensure public trust, but also that they know the actions that could erode that trust. So to that end, I think that this has done that. And I've instructed the director of HR to work with the mayor to compile any notice of disciplinary action that you should put in my file. I'm sure the city attorney would work with you for an executive session on that too. My next update on this topic is that I forwarded suggestions to the city attorney for amendments to our ethics policy. She and I discussed that might be a good avenue to put these in to really ensure that this never happens again. Next, the deputy city manager and I have taken some necessary personnel steps to address this issue. And finally, the city attorney let me know today that we don't yet have the final report from outside counsel, but we will be providing a summary of that as soon as we get that. Any questions on that topic before I move on?
Go ahead, Member Wright.
Thank you, City Manager Lewis. I know this has been a stressful period. The Citizen Committee have they received the new signs that they said that they were getting and trading out the old signs for?
I have not asked that question, but in that same email response from a member of the committee, they did indicate those are coming in tomorrow, and that he believes that those will be traded out when, that many people will turn in their other sign. He thinks, actually members of council have expressed that a lot of those have been taken out, but people are holding on to them and waiting for that exchange, and that was this committee member's belief also.
Okay. All right, because I have had reports and I've seen that the old ones still continue to come up in a few places. So, all right, hopefully they come in and they'll be able to just collect, that 100 plus that are left out there, or 100. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. And to your point, Member Wright, we thank you for turning in some of those signs that are out there. A member of the public did that as well. And we did dispatch code enforcement to pick up signs that were in the public right-of-way. We just are not going on private property to take those at this point. All right, attached to your packet, there is a letter written by the Arapahoe County Office of Emergency Management that the county is requesting that you all consider, that we consider signing. So the city attorney worked with Deputy City Manager Dodd to use this venue to get your consent on that. This is a complex multi-year plan that the city does not have the capacity to create on its own. Every 5 years, Arapahoe County works to develop this hazard mitigation plan, which includes data on specific projects from the cities in Arapahoe County. This plan also serves as a strategic framework to identify vulnerabilities, assess risks, and develop actionable strategies to potential hazards. The city's participated in past iterations of this plan, and by participating, we'll be able to contribute insights reflective of our expertise and our unique challenges faced by the community. Upon completion of the planning process, each city will have the opportunity to adopt the plan, which could open opportunities for state and federal funding should you all choose to move forward. Also, by signing the letter, the city would agree to work with the county to develop the plan, which would include identification of hazards unique to Englewood, a vulnerability analysis, identification of risk, formulation of mitigation goals responsive to public input, and development of mitigation actions. The city would be required to spend some time with the county on planning, tonight, if you consent to the mayor signing this attached letter, it would allow the city to participate in this planning process. So I'm glad to answer any questions that Deputy City Manager Dodd gave me information on to answer.
Thank you, City Manager. Go ahead, Member Ward.
I see a reference to FEMA here. What's the difference between a hazard and a disaster, or is there one?
Well, a disaster is something that is declared. It can be declared locally, it can be declared by the county, the state, or the federal government. So that's a disaster. The hazard is something that we're trying to identify early on so that we can prevent it or plan for it if that risk comes to fruition.
So when we look back a few years, we've had issues with heavy rains and sinkholes opening up in places where there should not be sinkholes. Would that be something that we would identify as a hazard on a plan like this?
Absolutely.
Or since we have freight trains moving through our city, a potential train derailment or something like that?
Right. Any of those with hazardous materials moving on roadways, on railways, tornadoes, late freezes, late snows when leaves are already on trees. These are all scenarios that we practice for and would be included in this effort.
Great, thank you.
City Manager, does this include any of the floodplains or anything like that, any flooding risks as well, or is it just going to be other hazards?
No, so there's a countywide plan, but then we will be digging into our own unique hazards that include, the areas that are designated as FEMA designated flood zones, as well as areas that we know have flooded but are not currently identified in a designated flood.
Well, I guess that's my question. Is there a possibility that the FEMA floodplains may grow as part of this?
We know that there is an effort underway that FEMA and the Mile High Flood District are including us in that will result in additional areas of the city being placed into flood zones. Those are not final yet, though, I should mention.
Okay, perfect. So that's a separate process, but it could be part of this as well. All right, I appreciate that. Go ahead, Member Russell.
So my question is, in the past, council has had discussions about declaring areas of the city floodplains because it creates problems for homeowners. Is the city council going to have the final say on that? I mean, I know there's areas of flooding, but once we declare something a FEMA flood zone, there are other issues that play into this.
Thank you for the question, Member Russell. Unfortunately, the city doesn't have that authority. Those will be designated and we will be informed of those designations. When I say we're working with them, I really mean that they have informed us that they are doing hydraulic studies throughout the Denver metro and the state that will change that floodplain, and we will be at the mercy of those designated zones.
This is FEMA has told us that, or the Mile High Flood District?
I would have to find out who's telling us that, but I know we're working directly with Mile High Flood District, but they are working directly with FEMA. I'm not sure if we're working directly with FEMA or not, but I can get that answer for you.
Okay, thank you.
I think I understand where Member Russell is coming from, because we have the authority to designate an area as a FEMA floodplain, and we haven't in the past because it does impact certain residents. So I do know where you're coming from. So we can take that offline, city manager. But anything else on this item? But I'm happy with the wording. I'm happy to be part of this. So yeah, anything else from members of council or anybody disagree? All right. Anything else for city manager's report?
That's all, Mayor.
All right. We are now adjourned. It's 9:15. We're off next Monday. See you on the 21st. Have a good evening.